Okay, so let's continue. In this video now, we're going to go ahead and do a demonstration of how to do masking and how the isolate selection function works. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, to put simply, what is masking? We're going to start with masking. It's going to be a way to cover up the geometry with a mask or a shaded area that cannot be edited or sculpted upon. To give you an idea, let's go ahead and draw out a stroke. If I show a stroke right there, notice I'm also on a basic material again. If I draw a stroke out, you can kind of see it performs as expected. But if I hold down the control button, just the control button, and sort of paint a glob right there, you can kind of see this is a mask, this dark shaded area right here. So if I paint that same stroke, you can kind of see it went everywhere except the glob area. I'll undo that. Now, one thing to note that when I held down control and I just did left click to draw my mask, you can sharpen the edges of this mask simply by, holding down control and left click tapping. And then left option click tapping. And if you want to soften it, you can just sort of hit left click. Now, it has a very, very high resolution, so the fall off is going to be a little bit slower than a sharp. So we can go down a subdivision here and do the same thing where it's left option click to sharpen. If you want to soften it, just hold control and left click and you can kind of make it soft again. So control left option left click makes it hard, and softening it makes it soft. If you wish to clear the mask, one thing you can do is hold down control and just simply delete the mask that way. So with that said, there are several different ways we can apply masks. We did one which is done through a stroke, but if you build off of what you want, if you hold down control, you can see the mask brush has its own little different area separate from the regular brush. So you can kind of apply similar concepts like this, where we do a stroke modification and experiment with an alpha. And if we hold down control and maybe adjust the focal shift, we can make a little bit more of a pronounced alpha. And one thing that's very interesting is that if we draw in an alpha like this, let's get a little bit more of a sharper one, like so. Go ahead and bring it back up. But we do anything like this and draw in an alpha like so, we can see our mask. We can also invert this mask as well by holding down control and left click in open space. And you can kind of see the same thing. So if you wanted to kind of draw on something like so, you could do something like that. Or if you wanted to go with something like maybe you want to try inflate, you can do something like that. And then of course smooth it out if you want. So that's kind of an idea. So to recap, to draw a mask, first hold down control, take note that the brushes change up here, modify the stroke to what you want, and it can be anything. And you can just draw a mask with the alpha on or off. It's up to you. This is all about experimenting. And you can change that focal shift down. And again, that's holding down control and left click, or control option to sharpen the mask, or if you want, hold down just control and left click. And of course, like smooth, at higher subdivision levels, the process is going to be significantly less than what it would be if you made the mask at lower subdivision levels. The other thing is you can create a mask not just with the stroke on here, but you can also do it with a marquee, like right here. And one thing we didn't talk about yet is we can also paint off the mask. So if we hold spacebar and give a demonstration, we hold Control, left Option or left Alt, and then we can also paint the mask off. Like so. If you wish to clear off the mask completely, one thing you can do is just hold left Control and just simply drag off, and you'll clear the mask as such. Now, one thing I will say is that's sort of the basic rundown of how masking works. This becomes a little bit important down the road as you become more of an advanced sculptor, because you learn to organize polygroups through masking quite often, and it becomes very useful. We didn't talk about polygrouping, but that's definitely coming up. So the second half of this is going to be looking at something called your Quick Pick 3D sculpting brushes. I call them your secondary sculpting brushes tools. And if you kind of take a look at any of these, you're going to notice that you get something that is by default a select rectangle. This brush right here is like an isolate selection. It's basically, if you hold down Shift Control, you can access it, and if I hold Shift Control and left click, you'll get a green little drag, and you can kind of see what we did right here. We can kind of isolate geometry. And this is another way we can also mask. Now, just like the mask, how it changes different brushes up here, also the select select rectangle is going to do the same thing. Now, one thing that I will go on record of saying is that if you hold Shift Control and then release Shift Control, but you're still holding down left key, you can kind of just keep that alive. It doesn't require you to hold Shift Control. You just need to do it at its initialized state. So again, if I hold Shift Control and left click drag, I can still release Shift Control and still keep this as alive as long as I'm holding it down, holding left click mouse button down. But another thing that's interesting is if I hold the space bar button, now I can pan this around. Now, in case you're wondering, masks are similar. You just hold down Control and left click, and then release Control, and then hold down space bar, and you can pan the mask, like so. And it also goes without saying, holding left Alt or left Option can kind of create a subtractive state. And then you can invert that and paint that out, or you can hold the press the W key and push that out if you want. You can have all sorts of fun. Or hold the Shift button and bevel it. You know, it's sort of compounding all the things we kind of learned. Or if you really want, you can also hold inflate and have a whole bunch of fun there as well. It's part of that, you know, you got to experiment to learn and have fun sort of scenario. So if we again hold Shift Control, and we showed you that spacebar trick for panning, let's show one more demonstration of that by modifying the brush. I'm going to hold Shift Control. I'm going to change the reticle this time to curve. We haven't done that yet. We haven't touched this. But now, if I draw out a slant, like so, we're going to get ourselves an isolate select on whatever's on the green side. If I'm going to go to a lower subdivision, if I want to draw a Shift Control slant and maybe stop it midway and then tap the left Option key or left Alt, I can create sort of a curvature. And then we can kind of little bit of fun there. Of course, it doesn't like to obey that very well, so we might just have to do it the old lasso style. But that is sort of something they need to fix. And of course, we can also try it with the circle. So it's important to kind of do that. It goes without saying, when you hold mask down, you get the same result. If you're using, example, a curve, you know, you can kind of have fun doing things and manipulating things this way. Now, one other thing about isolate select is that you can also do subtractive things. So hold shift control, release shift control, and then just hold down left option, and that can subtract things as well. So all of these things are very important down the road, because like let's say you really want to manipulate geometry, like, or have a specific pattern here, and you want a polygroup out of that for future sake. You know, all these things come down to an important function. So with that said, the next lesson down the road is going to be about polygroups, and it's a little bit of a complicated one, so feel free to rewatch it, but it's not something that I am going to say it's in paramount priority, but it's something to get a good head start on if you're a first-time beginner. So with that said, we're moving on into polygroups, so stick around.